Very good morning to you once again, and we continue from the monetary policy. And in our previous meeting, we discussed about that monetary policy. The state has two remote controls through which it controls the economy. One is the monetary policy, which basically is implemented through the central bank of the country, and the other one is the fiscal policy, which the state implement through more directly with its actions and its policy and strategies. Monetary policy is carried through the actions of central bank, as you can see the first sentence, or any other monetary authority. Like in the US, there is no central bank as such, but we have a Federal Reserve System over there. And that controls the quantity of money and the channel through which the money is supplied. Monetary policy has the money supply and the cost of money supply. The cost of money supply is nothing but the interest rate. And the main objective of the monetary policy of the country is to check the inflation, fostering the growth and output, and managing the liquidity. Growth and output is very important. Every monetary policy basically aims to enhance the output, employment, income of the country. It's a very strategic tool in the hands of the country. And also managing liquidity. Liquidity means that at any point of time, you don't have any payment crisis. In other words, whenever a payment is due, you are able to pay. That is called liquidity. So the state also ensures that the monetary policy also ensures that the state has enough of resources to pay its obligations as and when they arise. Monetary policy can be expansionary or contractionary. Expansionary means that whenever there is a recession, economy is in downswing, there is a recession, people are losing jobs, there is unemployment, factories are shutting down, the whole business climate is so dismissive, so disappointing. At that time, there is need to do some ignition. Somebody has to ignite. Somebody has to start some, take an initiative. And then the central bank of the country can follow an expansionary monetary policy. By expansionary monetary policy means you create more money supply. When you have more money, I mean, not just money, whenever you have something more, its price goes down. So when there is too much of money supply, the price of money, which means the interest rate, will go down. And when the interest rate goes down, the borrower will come and borrow the money. They will borrow the money, and then they would start consuming, spending, investing, and do all type of activities. And thus, a recovery process is expected to start when the state follows, the central bank follows the expansionary monetary policy. And the central bank would only follow the expansionary monetary policy when there is economy is reeling into recession, and we need to get rid of these shackles. On the other hand, the monetary policy can be contractionary. Contractionary is very conservative, just opposite to the expansionary. Contractionary means that the economy is overheating. There's too much of inflation in the economy. Prices are skyrocketing. Everything is overheated. There is a time for the economy to calm down. We need to bring it down because you can't sustain the overheated economy all the time. You need to calm it down. And the best way to calm it down is to take away the surplus money supply from the economy. You can't just enter in people's houses and rob the money. That is not what I mean by taking away the money. You can do this way, that the central bank can increase the rate of interest. When the rate of interest goes up, then the commercial banks will also increase the rate of interest. When the interest rate goes up, people are discouraged to borrow from the banks. When people are discouraged to borrow, they consume less, they spend less, and thus there is a kind of feeling of calming down in the economy. So the central bank can fine tune the economy with the expansionary and the contractionary monetary policy, depending upon the circumstances. Money supply. Money supply is controlled by the central government, and it's by the open market operations and changing the reserve requirement. These two words are very important. Open market means whenever the state or the central bank thinks that people need to have more money supply, there is more money, not people, I shouldn't say people need to have more money. State is not a Robin Hood, will come and give them money. Let's put it this way. Whenever the central bank feels that there is a less money supply in the economy, then the central bank would start buying the securities from people. You know, people have the bills and the bonds, some government securities. The state will start buying from them. When the state or the central bank start buying from them, then the money goes out of the pocket of the government or the bank and start going towards people and the companies. And thus, there'll be more money supply in the economy. On the other hand, if the central bank thinks that there is too much of money supply in the economy, we need to inject it out from the system. Then the central bank would start selling its bonds, its treasury bills, its certificates to people, to companies. And by doing so, the money would start flowing from the pockets of the people, companies, individuals to the state or the central bank. So by changing, this is called open market operations, by which the central bank can buy and sell its securities openly at the public platform. The second one is changing the reserve requirement. Changing the reserve requirement is that, let me give you a pictorial or a anecdotal account. The Bank of Finland, the Central Bank of Finland, thinks that the money supply in the country is less. The Bank of Finland is concerned not with you, not with me, not with the individuals, but with the banking system. This is central bank. And the deal is that the margin is that every time a bank borrow from the central bank, or let's put it this way, that every time somebody deposits 100 euros with Nordea, Nordea would ask by Central Bank of Finland to keep 10% margin with itself, and the remaining amount of money, 90 euros, Nordea can lend to the borrowers. Because when companies are keeping their bank deposits with the bank doesn't just keep them in there. It can never be possible that the bank just keep them in their wallet. No, it's never possible. And this 10% requirement is the limit set by the central bank of the country. Okay? And then just imagine that at a given point of time, the limit is 10%, which means that every new 100 euros deposit with Nordea would keep 10 euros with itself, 10%. And the 90 euros are lendable. I should say lendable word, because this is the money which Nordea can lend it out to its borrowers. And imagine the Bank of Finland, the central bank, feels that we need to create more money supply. And where is the problem? Why money is not spreading? And then they realize that maybe this 10% is too much. And then they say, okay, cancel 10%, make it 5%. Now, if somebody deposit 100 euros with Nordea, Nordea would maintain 5%, and the remaining money, 95 out of 100, 5%, Nordea keeps as a deposit, as a reserve, and now the 95 euros are lendable, which means that the banks are able to create more money supply by lowering the margin requirements. And similarly, if the margin requirement is very low already, and central bank of the country feels that there is need to cut down, there is need to discipline, there is need to follow the contractionary monetary policy, there's too much money supply. This will cause inflation in the economy. The value of the money will go down. People will not trust euro. What should we do then? Well, increase the margin requirement from 5% to 10%. Now, with 5%, the bank has to keep only, bank means the commercial bank, like Nordea example I gave you. The bank would keep for every 100 euros, 5 euro with itself, and 95 euros it can lend out. But now at 10% requirements, when the requirement is 10%, the bank has to maintain minimum 10 euros for every new 100 euros coming to the bank. And thus, bank would be able to create only 90 euros, lesser money than before. So by doing so, by acting, so in this case, the commercial banks like Nordea, like OP, or like other banks, or Danske, Handelsbank, they all are dancing to the tune of the Bank of Finland. And Bank of Finland can have this remote control. If it feels that the monetary policy should be expansionary, then it can ask that, hey, reduce from 10% to 5%. So that more money could be generated. And if Bank of Finland feels that there is too much of money supply already, we need to cut it short, we have to follow contractionary monetary policy, it can say, okay, increase the margin from 5% to 10%. So by doing so, you can fine tune the supply of money in the economy. So I want to explain a little bit more about the open market operations policy of the central bank with this sketch. So this is central bank of the country. And here is the economy, which includes individuals, companies, all the stakeholders in the economy. The central bank feels that there is need to expand money supply. Then the central bank would start basically buying securities from people and companies in the economy. When central bank is buying something from the people, then money would flow, money supply would flow from central bank to the economy. You can see that when you buy something, you pay. So when central bank is buying something, buying securities from people, individuals, economy, companies, then the money would flow from the pocket of central bank towards, so there'll be more money in the economy. On the contrary, if the money supply has to be controlled, cut short, or contractionary, let's use the word, then the central bank would start selling the securities to all the economic players, like companies, individuals. And when the central bank is selling something and people are buying, then people have to pay. So then the money will flow away from the people and going towards the central bank. So this way, the central bank can check if it wants to expand money, supply, then it would buy securities. If it want to follow the contractionary monetary policy, then it would sell the securities. And by doing so, the only difference between this picture and the previous picture is that here, the word is open. Here, the central bank comes openly in the market, in the competition. But here, it basically does everything through its agents. And who is the agent? The commercial banks, the normal banks where you can go, I can go. So the central bank can act directly, like open market, or central bank can maneuver things through its agent, which are the commercial banks. So it doesn't come in the picture directly, but it operates through its commercial banks. Yeah. So this way, the central bank can change, increase, decrease the money supply. Okay. Like money supply, we also need to know what is money demand. Why do you demand money? This is a very important question, that why do people demand money? Well, it's nice, but there are some reasons why people demand money. The first black dot you can see is that according to the liquidity preference theory, people choose to hold money instead of other assets.
The new slide is not showing.
So why do people demand money? There is a liquidity preference theory. The first point, according to this theory, money has the quality which no other asset has, is that money is the most liquid asset. And we need liquidity because we need to buy things of daily use. We want to buy goods, we want to buy services, we want to go abroad for vacations and all that stuff. Imagine you don't have money and the only property you have is a huge palace and you plan to go to holidays. How would you pay for it? It will be impossible. First of all, will you sell €1 million worth house just to go on holidays? Then the question is that what portion of the house you will sell? Will some buyer come and buy only a tiny mini portion of your house? What is the purpose? What is the usefulness to him or her? The problem is that with all other assets, they cannot be really reduced to the smaller level. The money supply is that you can pay somebody in banknotes for millions, but you can also give them in cents. Look, you can pay in cents. 100th of a euro, 100th portion of a euro, you can still pay because the money has this quality of divisibility. It can be divided into the smaller units. And why we prefer liquidity? Why do we prefer money? Because nobody says no to money, because it's the most liquid asset. All other assets, they all themselves seek to be converted into cash, into money. So the money people will always prefer because this gives us a freedom, economic freedom. Because if you have money in your pockets, your bank card is having enough credit, you feel good. You feel good that, oh yes, I can buy whatever I don't have to look at somebody's face. I can just go and buy whatever I want. But then you need to keep in mind that when you are holding the money, you have to give up the interest rate which you could have earned on the bank deposits. For example, imagine there is a 0% rate of interest in the market. So if you consume, you are not making any sacrifice of interest rate, because if you were not going to a restaurant today, if you were not consuming this 100 euros today, and instead, if you had kept this 100 euros with the bank will still give you 0% rate of interest. The problem happens when the rate of interest keeps increasing, 2%, 3%, 4%. Now, when you want to consume 100 euros today, you take the note out from your wallet and then you see that, hey, should I consume or should I keep this money with the bank? Because bank is giving me 7%, 8% rate of interest. Then you start getting more confused. So with the increasing rate of interest, the consumption is discouraged. The spendings are discouraged because then you prefer to keep the money with the bank and earn interest rate. So larger, higher the rate of interest, more is the opportunity cost of spending the money or holding the money as such. When there is 0% rate of interest, there is nearly no opportunity cost because the money in the pocket or the money in the bank, it makes no difference. So an increase in the interest rate raises the opportunity cost of holding money. And as a result, the quantity of money demanded is reduced. So as the interest rate goes up, the demand for money goes down. And this is how it shows in this picture. You can see that as the interest rate goes up, can you see this picture that the demand curve is like any demand curve, like demand for chocolates or demand for anything, for example. And we know that as the price is up, demand is low, the price is down, the demand is more. The same way, when the interest rate is up higher, then people would hold less money in their pockets and would save more money with the bank. Therefore, their demand for money, holding money in their pockets will be less because they are keeping all the money with the bank. And when the interest rate is going down, then people would have more demand for money because they prefer to spend today rather than keeping with the bank because bank is not giving you anything because the interest rate is so low. So when the interest rate is low, the demand for money is more. And when the interest rate is up, the demand for money is less. When the interest rate is up, then the demand for money is less, yes. And the money supply, there's a little bit difference. Normally, we know that when the money supply withdraw, let's say for chocolates, for example, in the price mechanism, this is demand for chocolates, and this is supply of chocolates. And there's an equilibrium where demand and supply are equal. This is the price of chocolate, and this is the total quantity of chocolates available in the market. But in this case, unlike this case, you can see now that, oops, you can see that here, the money supply is not going upward, it's constant. The reason is that at a given point of time, at any point of time, the supply of money is constant. It doesn't change, every now and then. At a point of time, the supply of money is constant. Okay, so therefore, it's not always going up. So in the short period, the supply of money, if you look at the money supply data of any country in the world, you will see that at a given point of time, the supply is fixed. And then the equilibrium would be same. The demand curve is this, supply curve is this. So this is the equilibrium where they intersect. And then the equilibrium interest rate would be determined in the market. Of course, when the demand changes, when the supply changes, the equilibrium rate of interest will also change. I think I can draw much better like this. So if this is the supply of money, and this money supply is on 30th of November 22, this is why at a given point of time, it's constant. And this is demand for money. Demand for money. And here is the rate of interest. I should say it, yeah. So this is the rate of interest. Now, the rate of interest can increase if the demand for money goes up. or if the supply of money in the future decreases. So for example, in the future, if supply of money is reduced, so like same thing, why do price increase? The price increase if the demand increase in the future or if supply decreases in the future. So if in the future, the demand for money increases or if supply of money reduces, then the interest rate will go up. Same way, the interest rate will go down in the future if the demand for money goes down or the supply of money increases. So this is the same mechanism. So there's no real difference between the two. All right. Yeah. And a higher price level increase the quantity of money demanded. So you see that when the price of commodities increase, this point is very relevant today. What I'm doing actually. So as you can see from the slide here, that when the prices are increasing, the demand for money also increases for a given interest rate. Currently, you see that we are living in the inflationary world. And earlier, you might be having 100 euros per week for your kitchen budget, but now you might have to take 200 euros to buy the same things. So a higher price level increases the demand for money. A higher demand for money leads to a higher interest rate. That is very important. This second point is very important because if you demand for money, if the demand for money goes up, see, if the demand for money goes up, the interest rate will go up. As the demand for money goes up, the interest rate will go up. You see this picture, I just drew it some seconds ago, that if before this political crisis, this was the supply of money, and this was the demand for money, then the interest rate was high. But the problem is that now, because you cannot afford your kitchen budget with the same amount of money, you have to have more money with you. So the demand for money has increased. But when the demand for money increases, the problem is that the interest rate also increases. And you can see in the markets that the interest rates have increased. And why interest rates have increased? Exactly because of this point, which I mentioned, that when there is an inflation, to keep up your living standards, you have to keep more money supply with you, the more demand for money with you. And as a result, the interest rate goes up. Okay. And then the third point, the quantity of goods and services demanded will fall. So it basically means that a higher money demand leads to higher interest rate, and the quantity of goods and services demanded fall, because you can't afford, if you are able to afford to buy the same amount of goods and services which you used to buy before, that is enough. Forget about that you will be having more consumption in the modern days. In fact, people are becoming more, more cautious in their consumption. People are buying lesser goods and services than before. To see the phenomenon, the higher there is a linkage between this point 1, point 2, and point 3. A high price level increase the quantity of demand, which you demand because you need to have more money to afford your kitchen budget. But when you're demanding more money, as a result, the interest rate goes up. But in the process, what happened? That the quantity of goods and services, earlier you were throwing the milk carton even before the deadline was over, the expiry date was over. Now you might be using the milk carton, the same milk, even after 3 to 4 days after that there is expiry. I mean, people do it, I know. So it means that there is no fresh milk, no fresh vegetables. Now if you have some leftover for the last 2 days, you don't throw it away. You can keep in the fridge because you know that, you know what, I want to eat it. So people have to cut short their consumption. So the idea is that ultimately there is a negative relationship between the price level and the quantity of goods and services demanded. And this whole thing is explained in a much better way here. So you can see that point number one. So the two sides, the money market and the real market. The right-hand side picture, this B picture, is the demand that we have studied in the price mechanism chapter. And this left side picture, this money supply and demand for money, that is all about the monetary policy. So the idea is that how the real economy and the monetary economy are connected with each other. And read the points by the number, point 1, then there's a point 2, then there's a point 3, then there's a point 4. Where the problem starts from, the problem is that an increase in the price level. When the price goes up, what happens? We studied in the law of demand. When the price goes up, the demand goes down. At low price P1, the demand was Y1, but at a higher price P2, the demand is lower Y2. An increase in the price level, number 2, increase the demand for money. As a result, the demand for money goes up. And when the demand for money goes up, there is an increase in the equilibrium rate of interest. And when there is an equilibrium increase, when there's an increase in the equilibrium rate of interest, then people, instead of consuming things, they prefer to keep the money with the bank because there is a higher opportunity cost. I mean, today, if the interest rate is 10%, and you have 100 euros and you're debating, should we have a party? Should we eat out? Or should we keep this money with the bank? And then you realize that when I eat this money out, when I spend this money in the restaurant, this 100 euros would be lost, okay? But if I keep this money with the bank, not only my 100 euros would be there, but I would also earn 10 euros extra as an interest rate. And then what happens? Then you start debating, should I really go to the restaurant? Should I keep the money with the bank instead? So what happened that when the interest rate goes up, you are planning to save more and spend less. And as a result, you can see that the quantity demanded goes down. So there is a very clear-cut connection between the real economy and the monetary economy. That is, when the price goes up, point number 1. Point 2, the demand for money increases because with the increased prices, if you have to maintain your living standards, you need to have more demand for money, and more demand of money leads to more interest rate, and more interest leads to cut down in your consumption, and you start preferring to save the money instead. Okay? Did you get the idea?
Yes.
Okay. So what we do now, I think my opinion is that we keep our syllabus only up to monetary policy, and we don't include the fiscal policy, okay?
Yes,
Even though we have time, but maybe I should let you study also because you have only 1 week to go before you do the exam, okay? So it'll be a little bit, even though I want, there's a conflict between heart and mind. My mind says that you only reduce the syllabus up to the monetary policy. So this is the last slide. And if you, not for the exam purpose, but just in case you are interested in knowing that what is going on in Finland, what type of monetary policy Finland is following, what type of monetary policy EU is following. and what Shab was telling, is it even true? Is it even, can you see what I lectured you in the real life? Then it's not a bad idea to have a look at these two web links. I recommend you that you have a look at it. Yeah. Okay, so with this, we can wrap up, and we will not do fiscal policy, but we will pull the brakes on slide number 8 when we finish the monetary policy.